If you're struggling in the Sea of Thieves to prove your worth and want to know what it takes to be the best, or at least become a competent pirate, then stick around and see the outcome of this journey. I'm CaptainDaddy and join me on another one of my tales. Waking up after another heavy night in the tavern, I decided that after last time I needed to up my game on the seas. So far I had won 0 battles and achieved basically nothing other than making a little gold here and there. I want to become a world-renowned pirate, and at the rate I was travelling, this was never going to happen. So I hatched a plan. Of sorts. Today I was going to accomplish anything that even an experienced pirate would look at in awe. But this did not come without its many troubles. So I boarded my vessel and dropped the sails to see what I could find amongst the Sea of Thieves today, which is where I bumped into my first victim, or so I hoped. There, sailing around in the open seas, was a lonesome skeleton sloop, and as you may know, I hadn't had much luck with these in the past, so I decided to redeem myself and take this fight head on. But something happened that I don't think anyone would have guessed. I'd say my firing was on point. I was blowing holes in their poop deck and keeping up with them despite their mysterious cannons which were putting me to sleep. I was even keeping on top of my repairs too, but there was something I missed. Their ship began to turn away and I laughed, feeling they'd given up the fight, and victory was indeed mine, until I grabbed the helm to chase them and I saw what was in front of me. Unlike I did, the skeletons saw the rocks sticking out from the ocean and turned away, whilst I crashed full speed into them, and although I could keep on top of the repairs and stop my ship from scuttling, I was now encased in rocks and my only option was to abandon ship. You can guarantee that after this, my morale was at an all-time low. My time to prove myself ended in the most embarrassing manner, but you could be sure that this sparked a fire in me that needed to be released. This is where the journey begins to favour me, and speaking of fire, once I had put together a new ship, I spotted a giant infernal tornado coming down from the skies like an ashen wind, and in the mindset I was in, today couldn't have gotten any worse, so I set off directly towards it. Not knowing what to expect, I arrived at the island, parking behind to hide my ship from others and the cannons on the front gate. But before entering, I found what looked to be a weeping chest just lying there. So I took it and put it next to my ship to prevent the tears from flooding my boat whilst I was away. Now without delaying any further, I ran into this fortress, and that is when he appeared. An ashen skeletal overlord who was not happy to see me was there and looked ready for a fight. And I knew that this was a worthy opponent for my journey today. But don't worry, the tale will not end after this conflict. This was only the start. It turned out that this lord could not fight on his own, and between throwing his fireballs and meteors at me, I was also being chased by his many undead minions. I did what I could all alone against such might, slashing through them with my sword, firing my pistol through their domes. But each time I thought I had him, he kept sending more my way, and only seemed to be getting stronger, sending more skeletons after me, blinding me so I couldn't see, and even creating a huge meteor shower that forced me to take shelter in a nearby ridge. But today of all days, I was not giving up, and without ever meeting up with the ferryman, I blew my last shot straight through his chest. And he crumbled into nothing, leaving me with a vast amount of treasure, which I am not ashamed to admit took me way too long to carry across to my ship. I seem to have obtained another problem chest that appeared to explode after time, unless in water, so I used my chest of sorrows, as I named it, to keep that safe inside my ship whilst transporting to the nearest outpost. I won't lie though, this was quite a pain, sailing and trying to stop the chest of sorrows from sinking my ship, but in no time, I had made it and all my treasure was laid out ready to sell. Now, as I said, this isn't the end of my tale, not by far, but this I'd say was already a commendable achievement, defeating what I've heard to be called an Ashen Winds event, all on my own without one trip to the Ferry of the Damned. But this made me hungry for more, and after making 47,000 gold from this endeavour, I knew I couldn't stop here. One thing you should know about me is I often talk to myself about the things I should do, out loud, and I needed to understand how to sail my ship better whilst in the heat of a battle. This is when I approached an eerie looking woman who set me off on a quest which she said will lead me on an adventure that would test all of my pirating knowledge. Upon arriving there, I wasn't quite sure what I had gotten myself into. I was searching through tunnels until I rescued a little companion. He showed me how to board the ferry of the damned and told me I'd find what I was here for. But at first, all I found was a strange pirate who goes by the name of Captain Jack Sparrow.
Then you must have heard tell of my heroic journey.
I realised this adventure was slowly taking me on a journey that I could put my skills to the test on. As Davy Jones, a tentacle-faced monster from the depths of the sea, arose, we were told to man the cannons. And this gave me great practice aiming my shots, knowing manoeuvring the cannons, and before long I could already feel the improvement in my firing. Alas, we lost Captain Jack and Davy Jones took his treasure, so I returned home from a failed voyage, only to learn that this meant the end of the Sea of Thieves. I knew I had to stick this out and rid the world from this creature, so I was set off on a search for the vessel known as the Black Pearl, which lay at the bottom of the ocean. The trail was long, but when I came upon her, she was a glorious ship. But issues began to arise as a voice set the sirens on me. I managed to defeat them, narrowly avoiding me, but their queen would not let me go, and in the end, she faced me herself, but after all the fighting I had been doing, she was quickly beaten down, and that is where I met 3 others who claimed to be friends of this Jack Sparrow. From this journey I received a compass that will point me in the direction of saving Jack, but I wasn't sure whether to believe it. However, on my way back to the castaway, a megalodon attacked my ship. She was a beautiful purple colour and fierce to behold, but I stood my ground, and this time I was going to stand and fight. She repeatedly beat against me and I thought for sure I was going to sink. But after many pistol shots and cannonballs, I had defeated my first megalodon, which left some nice treasures for me to sell off at the next outpost. Again, another achievement for me on this voyage, and I knew that my reputation as a pirate would now be looked at differently. I had nothing to fear in these seas, and I was ready to take on the world. But before I could do that, I needed to save it from Davy Jones, to which I followed the compass. This led me through windy streams and even past another band of not so friendly pirates also looking for Jack Sparrow. But alas, it was I who came out on top, and me that found him having a merry old time in a tavern. I forced him to come back and help us save the Sea of Thieves, and eventually he gave in and followed. Jack then led me to the depths of the ocean again, but this time I was aboard the Flying Dutchman. I even got to play on the famous organ. We caught up to Davy Jones and we were sure we had him, but as always with these kind of tales, he slipped through our fingers and it was us having to chase him one more time. You wouldn't believe the events of that night if I had not lived to tell them, but in the sky, bigger than any cloud I have ever seen, was the face of Davy Jones. We sailed right towards it, Jack Sparrow and me as the captain. Any hope in just facing Davy Jones alone was quickly crushed as waves of ghost fleets sailed past us. I commandeered the helm and Jack manned the cannons, taking them down, and I could feel myself getting used to this combat style of sailing. I even jumped on cannons to help take more of their ships down, and we did just that. I felt like a true master of the seas, manoeuvring my vessel, managing repairs and raining fire down on our foes. But that is when he arrived. Davy Jones had come to face us once and for all. We had an epic face-off. This was an all-out war, and although I kept on top of everything, I could feel myself struggling, until finally, I knew this had to end, so I fired upon him with everything I had. And with that, the Flying Dutchman went down with its captain. We had saved the Sea of Thieves, but we were not done. Jack and his crew left, and I was ready to go to the nearest outpost and tell my tales. But before I could get back, another Megalodon was hot on my heels, and I knew I was ready to fight, so I prepared the cannons and opened fire, over and over. They barely touched me before my final pistol shot ended its life, meaning more treasure for me and more respect amongst the sea. I arrived back at the outpost and knew I was ready for more stories and grog, for now was the end of this tale. But the journey I was sent on by this castaway put me into situations that I could have not gotten into any other way. I learned so much about controlling my ship, firing the cannons and even solving puzzles in the world. But most of all on this journey, I knew I had really achieved something after defeating 2 Megalodons, taking down a champion of the Ashen Winds, and stopping Davy Jones from taking over the Sea of Thieves. But if you'd like to hear how my first ever journey went and see the sheer amount of dumb luck I was having, click on the tale on screen now and be sure to look out for more tales from Captain Daddy. But until then, arrgh!